Perfect. Hello. Hello, everyone. So welcome to the second webinar that we're doing on grading. Just as I put in chats, to ensure a smooth experience for everyone. So those that are attending live, please mute your microphone. Feel free to open up your video camera if you'd like. Use the chat to comment, or you can ask questions and emoji react as much as you'd like. All right. So in order to stay on track, though, I'll ask for questions of like detailed nature. You can ask them at any time, but I might answer them a little bit later on. But if there's a question about clarity or if there's something I've just said, I'll definitely be answering that as soon as possible to help you out. All right, so this is going to be about roughly 45 minutes of presentation and 10 minutes of questions or so. If a bit of spare time with a bit of leeway there, we'll see how we go. All right, so let's go. If I can go to my next slide. Excellent. So we're going to be discussing grading. So first of all, I'd like to discuss setting up the Google Classroom. So we want to put systems in place for a simpler process, just to make things easier for you, collecting grades and so forth. And then we're going to talk about taking grades, like the actual best practices you can do for grading your students, and look at the BFITS grading sheet. So the actual grading sheet that all your official grades have to go into at the end of the unit or of the semester, and then finalizing that for each class. So we'll look at how we can do that, and there'll be a full demonstration of an example class we have as well. So afterwards, frequently asked questions. There's a couple there that may be answered before we even get to the Q&A section, and then of course Q&A section. Okay, let's go. If there's any issues with the audio for those who are live, please feel free to let me know, and we'll see how we go. Regardless, this is being recorded and recorded from my section, so it should come through crisp on the recording, I believe. All right. So setting up the Google Classroom. First of all, we want to set up our grade categories. This is probably number one thing we want to do as soon as we've got a new classroom with all our students added. We want to make sure that our grade categories for that class match the syllabus. So we actually get the grade categories from the syllabus and put it into the grade categories of the Google Classroom. And you do that within the settings of the Google Classroom. So if you've got classwork, participation, test, you would want to have that in here in your grade categories. Now, if you've got project as well, you can put that there. So HKB has project as well. You can put all four. If you're doing an additional, you may have the project in a separate Google Classroom. So you may have your additional separated from your core or your basic, and you might have two different classrooms, or you might have the one classroom. Either way, make sure that your grade categories are set up from the syllabus of that masterclass, okay? So you get that from your masterclass, your classwork, participation test, and project. Now, the grade category initials, so we see sometimes it's PT in brackets, we see sometimes it's PA. It doesn't really matter. It's just something to let you know which grade it's for, so you can do whatever your manager has said. So if it's PA, or maybe it's P for project, TE for test, whatever it is, it doesn't actually matter what the letters are. Just stay consistent with what your manager has said. That's fine, no problem. All right. Now, additionally, we want to make sure the default points, I highly recommend 20, and I'll go into that why a bit later on. But essentially, it's because you're at the end, your final grades have to be out of 20. So having all of your grade categories for all your assignments out of 20 will make things easier to average down the line. We'll explore different options as well. Okay. Continuing on, the grading periods. Now, this allows you to keep track of the grades you're taking. So it allows you to filter the grades tab of Google Classroom, and it's for overview purposes only. So you've got your different tabs here. Where's our magic marker? Okay. We've got our stream tab, our classwork tab, people, and grades. So within the grades tab, you can't copy your grades out of there. It's not very easy. The functionality isn't there yet, but you can view by grading category, or sorry, grading period, pardon me, grading period. So if you've got something that an assignment that doesn't have a grading period, you can look at those, or you can look at the ones that are assigned to Unit 1 or the grading periods assigned to Unit 2. It's just really good to get an overview of all your students in that class and what work they may be missing from that unit. So if you're up to Unit 3, instead of having Unit 1, Unit 2, all these other assignments getting in the way, you can just filter down to grades, to the grades for Unit 3 and just see if any students are missing work from those ones. Okay, it makes it easier to follow up. So you also do this in the settings part, grade periods. Now, some people's functionality isn't there. Google is slowly sort of rolling this out between all the accounts, but if the functionality is there, I highly recommend using it. Now, all you would have to do is go into this area and type in your grade period. Just use Unit 1, Unit 2, etc. And the start date can be just before term starts for Unit 1. And the end date you might put as just an arbitrary, maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks in the future. And then once you actually finish all the content for Unit 1, go ahead and retroactively change the end date so that it matches with what actually happened when you rolled out your assignments. And then you can start Unit 2 from the day after. Sorry, this is American format. From the day after of your Unit 1 ending, and do so forth with Unit 3 and Unit 4, Unit 5, etc. And additionally, you can copy this grading period to other classes. So if you're teaching the same class and subject to the same year level, and you've got multiple classes, you can copy that across to make it easier. And even if you're doing maybe different subjects or so forth, and you're keeping it consistent with your units, you can copy that across as well, just to make things easier. Okay, keep moving on. So the grading scale and grade calculations, these are also settings found within the Google Classroom, so each individual Google Classroom. Now, we'll start with the grading scale. Now, this may be school specific. So I do know a couple of schools like to set A+, B-, C, or students getting an F and so forth. And that's up to the school. I would just keep it very consistent with what the other teachers are doing. So if you don't know what any other teachers are doing, then I would just stick with the raw values. Don't worry about a grading scale or a point scale like this. It's most important to keep consistent with the other teachers so that students, they know what grades mean what. So they're not getting an excellent from one teacher and a B- from another, and it's just a bit confusing. If all else fails, just use the raw number from the assignment you gave them. So if the assignment's out of 20, you would give them a 15 out of 20, and you don't have to worry about all these extra fancy things, okay? So most important, be consistent with the other teachers or the school's requirements. Next part is the grade calculation. Now this really is your preference. It's the grade that the students can see. So the show of overall grade, where's my ink? You can show the overall grade here, and I would recommend not showing this. The final grade that the students actually see once they get that from the school will have been processed beyond what you give in the final grade sheet. So if you send your final grade sheet to your operations manager, they have to do a few calculations. They send it to the school's going to do a few things, and then the students get their final grade in the end, right? That's for the majority of our schools. And if the score that they were keeping track of during their whole term ends up a bit different, there may be some questions asked, and it's just basically best to avoid that possibility of there being any confusion over what grades they're getting. All right, so I recommend to hide the overall grade unless the school's requiring it, or there's some other requirement to do that there, maybe from your manager. Okay, so that's my personal recommendation, but it is your preference. All right. Now, labeling your grades. This is important for something that we're going to talk about later. But essentially, whenever you hand out some assignment, it's really good to label your grades. So you can use the grade category initial, like PT or PA for what do you call it? For participation, CW for classwork, or I learned this recently from our academic manager, Matt Krupa. You can actually use emojis, and you can get that from Get Emoji. Really cool. It actually makes it look a little prettier. a little bit more engaging for the students instead of just some random code that they don't really know about. In this example here, we've got both. I've got a little camera there. I've got a little handwriting thing, which is for the test. There's book for classwork and a hand up for participation. And you can do that. Simply go to the website and copy and paste the emoji that you find. There's no apps required or anything like that. You don't need to download anything. Just go to getmoji.com. I know it sounds like an advert, but it's actually quite useful. You can do a search for whatever emoji you like. So if you typed in book, you might get that one. There's quite a lot there. Copy, paste it into the title, and it shows up. It even shows up in Google Sheets, which we'll look at later. So I highly recommend to include the unit number as well for when your Google Classrooms are filled with multiple units. So if you've got Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4, and they're all in the same grade sheet, it's much easier if you put the unit there as well. So U1 for Unit 1, U1 for Unit 1, U2 for Unit 2, etc. Okay, so I highly recommend doing this, and you'll see why more so later on, which I'll show you. Okay, now we're going to talk about taking grades for a moment. Remember, at any time you can put questions into the chat, and we can get to that when it's appropriate. So, best practices for grading the students. Let's have a look here. So, we've got basic. A lot of teachers have a basic, an additional, or a core and supplemental. So basic and core, basic, same thing. Additional, supplemental, pretty much the same thing there. So a lot of our BFITS teachers have these separated. So they've got their basic and they've got their additional. Okay. Now, the content must be followed rather closely for the basic or the core. Okay. The focus here is actually learning the content as prescribed by the Ministry of Education, the Thai Ministry of Education, and that's for the students' current year level of what they're doing. So that's what the school expects you to follow because it's a requirement from the Thai government, right? So that's the Ministry of Education. Now, additional or supplemental, there is a little bit more flexibility with the content here. The focus tends to be on developing skills or taking a practical approach to the content. Okay, so it might be a little bit more project-based, a little bit more working with their peers to create something, to produce some sort of work. Now, that's not to say you can't do that kind of work in the basic or the core. It's just additional tends to have a little bit more freedom with the actual content of what you're teaching. You still need to teach the content with basic or core. If you're doing, as an example, movie genres is your content, you still need to teach that. The way you teach it can still be flexible, but you must still teach all the appropriate vocabulary, all the appropriate grammar, all the key words that you're supposed to learn. If it's maths, the key equations and different types of maybe shapes they're doing. If it's geometry, something like that. It all must be covered. You can still be creative with it, but the content must be followed closely. Okay, let's move on. Now, the different types of work for grade categories. So classwork, participation, test, and project. We'll break this down a little bit more. Now, we don't have homework anymore, but that's essentially like classwork or participation, just flipped to do at home, and that's okay. So classwork's a little bit more content-specific knowledge. Participation, we're having a little bit more engagement, a little bit more teamwork, detail, or the effort they're putting in, the focus they have. A test, you can have one end-of-unit test at the end of the unit, so you complete all the content for Unit 1, then you do an end-of-unit test, or, and that's for your basic or core, or maybe there are a few different ways to do sort of checkpoint tests along the way as well, so to break up that unit into little sections and do tests along the way. But this score is typically going to be more of a closed book score rather than like a classwork or a participation. And project, basically the combination of their work for additional or supplemental. So it could be like a presentation or something. I'm actually jumping ahead on my next slide. So classwork, we're talking about correct use or understanding of the vocabulary. Completing the textbook work, right? So any exercise in the textbook, we're talking about organizing or linking the concepts you've provided them, especially like something in math or science, I mean. So making sure they get a full understanding of what's being taught there in that unit. Now, the accuracy or reasoning. So, if you've got maths, you're doing working out. Are they providing all the working out as appropriate for that equation or for that problem? Are they providing reasoning within science as to why something's happening? Okay, or are they just repeating? So you can use all this kind of stuff for classwork. Now, participation. You can have, are they fulfilling the effort, that they're supposed to for what's required. So you set the criteria that they do 5 full sentences, but they only do like 3 sentences and very short ones that aren't full sentences, right? Okay. Maybe their teamwork or contribution in group activities. That's something we can grade for participation. Their attendance. Attendance is kind of like it should be a kind of a free point, right? But maybe you have a group of students that aren't attending as much as they should. They're skipping classes. That might be something that can influence them to actually attend more, right? To participate. Are they filling out their notebooks? Are they completing drafts of work that are needed to be completed? So not necessarily testing, is that draft you wrote grammatically correct, or is it accurate to the content? Just seeing if they've actually put some effort in towards completing that draft. Something like that. That's a participation, All right. Test. So we're talking about comprehension. We're talking about critical thinking and problem solving, like actually getting them to work things out. Depending on the student level, you might have some more basic comprehension questions, or for more advanced students, you're really including more problem solving questions, okay? It can be on paper or Google Forms. There are pros and cons here. Your paper tests are going to be harder for them to cheat. On Google Forms, there's a lot of ways they can communicate with each other and use online resources to assist them and so forth. But it's easier to grade and to mark. It all comes through nice and quickly. It gets imported to your to your Google Classroom grades, so that the grades get imported there. You can have multiple choice questions, short answer questions, or long answer like writing questions. I highly recommend a bit of a mixture, right? Most of their exams are going to have multiple choice, short answer, and writing, so it's good to prepare them and get them practicing to do that. Now, projects. We can produce or construct an item, like an actual 3D item that they create, put together with different materials. It could be a presentation or a play, right? So they're actually presenting in front of their whole class and the teacher, and you can invite other teachers to come in and have a look as well. Poster, so it could be a physical poster that they have to put some scraps together, or it could be a digital poster they've done in something like Canva. All right, a lab experiment or a lab report for more science-based, or maybe you've got an article or an essay or a summary paper, something that they have to write on a certain topic as well, and that can be a big long-form project as well. All right. So these are how we break down those categories. Now, balance and grading. It's got a lot of words on this page, but essentially what I was alluding to before with the online, with the multiple choice, short answer, long answer, and the paper test versus the online test, it's about balancing, making sure that you're balancing the grading time with the effectiveness of the work. So realistically, if you make everything sort of more long form based, they have to write out lots of answers, they have to really explain themselves, they have to complete a lot of work. It's just going to take longer in the classroom, okay? It's going to take longer for you to grade. So that would be ideal, but we don't have the time. And a lot of us have lots of students, so you have to find a balance. Maybe sometimes you do a test online, but you do the classwork all written by hand. So maybe you pick and choose which parts you want to do online, like a Google form, and which parts you want to do paper-based, okay? Personally, I like to do my tests paper-based and everything else make as easy to mark as possible. So for the test, for the paper-based. That way, they really have to put it down like it is in exams, sort of exam conditions, and complete it that way. Some short answer, some long answer, some multiple choice. Give them a real mixture with that. But you have to make sure that your workload and the student's workload isn't too much, right? So balancing that out. If you put too much workload, the pacing of your curriculum is going to be put out of whack, and you'll be having too much work to complete and to grade, and your units will take longer to complete. If you can get through more in one class, then you're going to be pacing a lot better. So again, another thing to consider. Their English level, it's going to be harder to do a long answer question and harder to do writing, long writing, if the English level isn't so high. So you have to take that into consideration. You're going to have to potentially build them up over the course of the school year to be able to maybe fill in the blank of a small sentence and then start to do more, build up a little bit more. And it's always good to have a mixture of questions within your exams and your classworks and your assignments to have them at different levels to make sure that your more struggling students are able to still complete something and still be challenged to do some work, and your more advanced students can have the tougher questions to really test their comprehension. Okay, some subjects may require more writing, like an English may require more long form writing compared to a math, where you can do some sort of smaller equations. But then again, some math problems, maybe they're going to be requiring them to do a lot of working out. So thinking about how much time each of your questions or your kind of work is going to take, right? The quality and the quantity of your work, okay? Thinking about how much you're going to provide them and how effective it's going to be. So consider all of these things when you're deciding how to put your grades out to your students for that whole unit, okay? Making sure you've got a balance of difficulty and a balance of workload. You need to keep everyone motivated. It's not good to overburden yourself with too much work, too much grading, okay? Or the students with too much work as well. They've got other subjects, remember? Okay, we'll move along. Now, the grade results, what we're hoping for essentially, right? When assigned work is designed well, it naturally yields grades in a bell curve for a class of typical students. So if you've got 30 students, you're going to have your high performers up near the top getting 20 out of 20. You're going to have some low performers down the bottom getting maybe a 12 out of 20, or some really low performers, maybe a couple down near the bottom who aren't getting very good scores. Their English level isn't good, or they're not putting any effort in. And that's kind of what you're expecting to see. You want your average performers to perform around that 15 mark, 15, 16, something around there. You don't want too many people maxing out, everyone getting 20s, everyone getting maximum score. And you don't want your whole class getting zeros either for not giving it a go and not participating. So it needs to be allowing students to be challenged at all performance levels, regardless of they're low performing or high performing, they're all challenged. Okay? All right. Making sure we're balancing our grades well. Okay? Let's continue along. So, most important part of grading, honestly, because students are distracted and they love spending time with their friends or playing games or so forth, we've got the follow-up. So this is ensuring students complete their work. So what you should be doing already, and if you're not, that's okay. We can start soon. We can start now. We can check for missing work once or twice a week. So have a look here on your on each assignment. Check your assignments and have a look. How many people have handed in? All right, I've got 0 people handed in, 5 assigned and 18 marked. So I'm still waiting for assignments from 5 of these students, as an example. Essentially, that means you should be checking in with these 5 students as frequently as possible as you see them throughout the class, all right? Follow up, follow up, follow up. There are lots of different ways you can do that, okay? You can email. They're not necessarily going to see that, though, but it's good to do it just to show that you have actually put that put that out to the students. So I'd highly recommend emailing and private messaging on Google Classroom, right? Don't use the other functions, just use Google Classroom, the private message there. I like to also write the names on the board, and you can also announce it on the stream on Google Classroom. I mean physical board in their classroom. They usually have a homeroom. You know, if you've got a homeroom or you've got your own intensive room perhaps, I like to put their names on the board, and students like to get their names off the board as soon as possible usually. It's usually only a few, like 5, and you put their names up, and they, you know, feel like a spotlight's been put on them, and so they'll sort of be encouraged to complete that work. Okay. Now, speak and support them directly in class. This is probably the most effective one, right? Speaking to them directly and supporting them, not scolding them. Why haven't you done this work? Get them to actually open up the work that you are expecting them to complete. If it's on Google Classroom, open it up. Like, find some time within their, you know, their group work time to pull them aside and just go and say, hey, I'm missing this one. Can you open that up for me, please? And get around to all your students in that class and who have that outstanding work. If you've got quite a few, it's going to be a bit harder to do that, but try your best to speak to them individually. Right? They feel more accountable when you approach them directly. So making sure you're also supporting them. Right? A lot of the time, students don't want to do it. One, because they're lazy, sure, but also because they don't know how or they don't feel confident. So if you support them as well, that will really help them. Now, in terms of your time management and your planning of your whole unit, make sure you actually allow time to catch up within class and review before tests. Don't just say you need to do it at home, you need to do it at home, you need to do it at home. You can expect them to do it at home, and you can say that, but at some point before the grades are due, you need to allow them time to actually catch up in class, usually during that review before the test, right? So we're doing a review for the unit, maybe we're playing a booklet or something like that, pull them aside and just say, hey, we've got this missing work. Give them something to complete, help them through it. Sometimes you might have to make up additional little work packets that maybe take a few things from here and here, the really important stuff they need to do, and get them to complete that especially, all right? That would be for the student that is missing quite a few bits of work there, right? Like this one here, okay? So remember that grade sheet as well. On the grade tab from the main page, you've got the stream, the classwork, the people, and the grades. If you go to the grades there, you can actually see overview for the entire unit and find out who's missing lots of work and make sure you follow up with them, okay? Good. So follow up. Key part is once or twice a week, check and follow up at every class you can where you see them, and speak and support to them directly, okay? But I do recommend taking every approach as possible, but those are the most 2 effective ones. Okay, let's go. So, communicating grades with students. All right, first of all, when you're assigning work, you have to give them the criteria. Tell them what they're being graded on. If it's a spelling test, well, then they're being graded on the spelling of the word. If they spell the word almost correctly, but it's not correct, well, is that going to be a partial mark or is it going to be a 0? Right? They need to know how they're being graded. So you need to give them that information. Right? That's number 1. Right? And then, once you actually have them complete the work, you need to grade them and return all the work to the students in a timely manner. You can't just leave it going for a week or 2 and they've done this assignment or they've done this work and they don't know what they got for it. Okay, so make sure you give that back to them. Make sure that they're graded and they can see that on Google Classroom. If you've got, physical papers maybe they did, you can hand those back to them. I like to get them to do like a classwork sheet and give them the actual score on the classwork sheet after I've graded it, put the grade into my Google Classroom and then hand it back to them so they can keep that and use that as a study resource as well. Okay, now what not to share? We don't share our BFITS grade sheet, number 1, okay? Don't show that. 1, it's got multiple students, not just 1 student. But 2, it's just the official grade, and as we said before, this grade number may get manipulated beyond here and go further in. So we just don't show them. That's just kind of it. Don't show them the BFITS grade sheet. Now, their exam grades. Some schools have certain requirements around that, so do what the school sets out. Okay, just follow what the school says, and your manager will tell you to do the same there. The pre-test, the post-test, the diagnostic test, whatever result there is, do what the school and your program manager says to do, essentially. But basically, just don't show the BFITS grade sheet and follow the practices as set out by your manager and the school. Okay, now, in this little picture here, I might just go back up. This one here is a nice little snippet of criteria that has been laid out quite nicely. So we can see distinguish. So we can see it's notebook page 7. They have to distinguish the parts of the atom. I know the text is a little bit small. They need to restate details about the atomic number, differentiate, contrast. So there are these points they need to complete, right? If you have a writing assignment, maybe you're setting, like as an English teacher, you would want to tell them exactly what you're grading. Are you grading their grammar? Are you grading their spelling? Are you grading their overall structure of their sentences? Are they using full sentences? Are they using the correct grammar point? Or are they on theme? What is it that you're looking for? Give them that understanding so that you can grade them accordingly. Okay, next. So the BFITS grading sheet. All right, so we'll start our demonstration shortly, but basically what it looks like is you select any assignment in your Google Classroom and you click on the graded number. I like to click on the graded number just because it takes me to the page I like. All right, click on the graded number and then you copy all grades to Google Sheets. All right, that's in your settings. So click on the settings cog, click on the copy all grades to Google Sheets, and then it'll appear something like this. And this sheet doesn't automatically update. All right, you need to make new copies anytime. Anytime you want to take more grades out. So if you've graded the majority of your unit, but you haven't graded one classwork, I would wait until it's all done, all the students have put their work in, you finalized it, you said no more, the grades are due now, and basically you've copied that and then you only have to copy it once. If you do that multiple times throughout the unit, you're going to run into trouble having many copies of this sheet and having just too many things going on. Essentially, you want to just make sure that you do it once at the end of the unit once all the grades are taken. Okay, and we'll do, oh no, not demonstration coming up soon, but basically what you can do is you can manipulate the columns, rows as much as you need within this Google Sheet from Google Classroom, all right? But you don't want to edit the numbers there, okay? You want to edit the numbers back in Google Classroom. If you made a mistake, like you accidentally typed in 2020 instead of 20 or something like that, so they've got 2020 rather than 20, then you edit that back on Google Classroom and then import it or export it again to Google Sheets. Now, then we're going to transfer everything to the official grade sheet. Only put the final numbers for each grade category, and we'll show you how to do that now. So I've got my example sheets, which I'll open up. Yes, we're doing our demonstration. I just need to change my presentation view, my window. Here we are. Okay, this should be everything. So first of all, we've got our classroom. Number one, we've got our classroom. Actually going to go here and pick any assignment. Doesn't matter which one. These ones aren't graded. This is for the next unit. Let's say we're doing a different unit. It doesn't even matter if you haven't graded these ones. You can still go here, click copy all grade to Google Sheets, right? That's what we were just saying before. Now, I might also just show you something really quick. If you've used a Google form, like this assignment has, you can actually import grades over the right here and import grades. So it'll take all their results from their Google Forms, little quiz there, and import the grades here. So this one happens to be out of 10. So we would import the grades, and what have they got in the Google Forms? That raw number gets put into here. Okay, now let's actually see what happens when we click copy all grades to Google Sheets. We get something like this. Now, this is just an example sheet So they're fake AI-generated Thai names. That's okay. Now, first of all, we need to order everything, okay? So we need to check that our students are in the same order, going down the list here, that they are in the official grade sheet. Because if you start copying things across and the students are in the wrong order, then maybe one of your lower performing students gets the grade of the high performing students and vice versa, and they're just not getting what they accurately achieved, right? We want them to be accurate. That's number one. So check the list here. Now, if they have the 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, and it's in order like that, perfect. It makes it so much easier when the students have that like that. But if it's not, you'll have to just check. All right, check one at a time. The good thing is you'll only have to do it once for the whole school year, and once you know it's in order, you don't have to change anything. So check, 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 check. We're going to be doing the grades for Unit 2 or Topic 2. So this is Topic 1 already imported for our example class. And we're going to say, in this case, everything is in order. All the students are in the correct order, which is perfect. Now, watch out for those. When there's 0, 1, sometimes there might be a 1, and the 1 might not go in the same spot as the 0, 1. So it's always good to put that 0 in front, okay? Now that we've ordered this, let's say there was some error. I'll show you how to move it around. So if we wanted Siri pawn up the top, we could click and hold on the 9 here, which is the row number. So click on that, and you can see this thick gray line up the top, and if you move that up and down, you can change the position. Much easier to put them in the same order rather than trying to copy numbers around and so forth. So I just drag that one around. I'm going to do a Control-Z just to take us back and undo that. All right. Now, we said that we are looking for our Unit 2. All right. We only want the Unit 2 grades for this class. We've got 30 students, and all we want is the Unit 2 for classwork, participation, and test. Okay. We've also got a over here for the additional. So make sure you're doing additional as well as your core or your basic. But in this case, we're just going to show you the basic for now. So what do we need to take in? We only want to take Unit 2. So in that case, we don't need Unit 1. All right, let's have a look at the top here first. It's ordered in a particular way. The way this is ordered is actually by due date. So I highly recommend making sure all your assignments that you give have due dates. Because if you do it due date throughout the year, you'll have everything, all your assignments will be in order from Unit 1 to Unit 2 to Unit 3, if your due dates are in the correct order. If you don't have a due date, like these 3 assignments, they're just going to pop up the front and get in the way sometimes and require a bit more organizing. So for example, I've got a Unit 2 unit summary here. It's a bit of classwork, CW. Now, I want that to be counted, so we're going to make sure that stays there, but everything else we don't need. So what can we do? We can get rid of it. We can hide it, or because we can get this sheet as many times as we like, we can just delete it. So there's no messing about with hiding stuff. So we've got quite a few bits of work here. I'm going to select all these columns, right? So from Fun Game, which isn't even graded, Science Day, which isn't even graded, we're going to go across and select everything that's Unit 1. So that's a Unit 1 here, Unit 1 here, Unit 1, and so forth, all the way. They're all Unit 1. Yep. Double check. Unit 2. Okay, that's where Unit 2 starts. So I'll just select this one. And now I've selected all these Unit 1 items. Just double check, triple check. Okay, they're all Unit 1. So what we can do is we can right click just on the top there, and we can delete those columns. Right, we don't need them because we're doing Unit 2 right now. Excellent. Okay, good. Now, what we want to do is we actually want to put these in order. But what order do we want to put them in? They're already in due date order, but it's actually much easier if you put everything in participation grade order or grade category, sorry. So participation grades, classwork grades, and test. If you've got project there as well, put that in the project section. So we've got PT, CW. What we're going to do is actually just grab all of these and click and drag. So click and drag that around. So PT is over here. Let's just put the CWs at the front because we've already got quite a few there. Grab and hold that PT, drag that over to where that other PT is. There we go. Now they're together. Let me just do that for the rest of them. So that's PT, that's PT, that's CW. Move that across. I'm probably going to do this a little bit fast to follow, but the same premise applies no matter how fast you're doing it. Okay, very good. Now there are a lot of assignments here for this particular unit. Now you might not have this many assignments, but I do recommend having more than just one assignment. Right? We need to make sure our students are being tested fairly or graded fairly. So all the CWs are at the front now. PT starts here. Let's check the rest of them. PT, 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 all the way up here. All right, and then we've got unit test and then some project ones there as well. So now, how many classworks do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's quite a lot. All right, we did a lot of classwork here. That's no problem. If you did less than that, that's fine. But what we're going to do here is actually check. Hold on, that one's project-based, so maybe that's my additional. This one's project-based. Oh, yeah, so that's probably my additional as well. So I'm actually going to put those to the side again, which you can use for your additional grade, of course. If you're only doing a core and you don't have the additional, you may not run into this problem. But if you are doing the additional as well as core, it's good to label it with project or something to let you know that's actually part of your additional. Project or additional or supplemental, however you want to label it, just make sure you're aware which grades belong where. That's why we do the grade labeling. Because if we don't label it, then we won't know what goes where. All right, column onto the right, add one column to the right, just right click, add one column to the right. So we're going to, what do we call this? We're going to summarize all these together. Summarize is the wrong word. We're going to average them. So class work unit 2, average. Give yourself a title so you know what's going on. And in the box down here at the very top, type equals average, full word. You can click this or you can open the bracket and then select which ones you're going to average. So I'm just going to select these 4. Okay. Hit enter and it's going to suggest to do all of this. If you accidentally close this autofill, you can click the tick and it will do it for you. But if you forgot to do that, you can still just drag down from this box. Select the box, use the drag down function. Or select all the boxes and press Control D is a nice function I like to use as well. So all of this, that's your average. All right, we're going to take those and we want to put them into our classwork for topic 2, right? CW for topic 2. However, we want whole numbers only here. So we don't have whole numbers here. So we're going to actually go to this function over the top and click the button decrease decimal places. Decrease, decrease, decrease. And that's automatically rounded it for you. So you've got all these grades and you've automatically rounded them here. So we're going to copy all of that. We're going to copy all of that and we're going to paste it into our grade sheet. So make sure when you paste though, don't paste normal, otherwise you're actually going to copy the average function. You want to make sure you paste special and use values. You can use the Control-Shift-V function there. Paste values. So we've got our functions here, our scores here for our grades. They're final scores. Hold on, let's look at what's happened down here. So all of these white ones are good, no problem. We've got a red, that means they're below the pass rate for this school. Okay, so 12 is typically your pass rate, 60%, 12 out of 20. So that's below, that's just to let you know, okay? On this grade sheet, however, it's also got a yellow color, 465. I must have made a mistake somewhere and now that student has a very large score. So that doesn't seem right. Let me go back and see where that mistake came from. So who was that for? That was for Tawachai Sutiwong. All right, so let's find that student here. Oh, hold on. Yeah, there it is, 465. And we accidentally put 18, 19. So maybe I was trying to put 18 and then put 19 in additionally, or maybe I was trying to change from 18 to 19. Regardless of what it was, remember you want to actually change it in your assignment. So go back to the actual assignment and change the score there. because the student's going to see 18, 19, and that doesn't make any sense. So we'll get the actual score. For this purpose, we won't do that because it's a fake grade, but you would go back to your classroom and change it. So now that's fixed. You can copy these again. Make sure they're the correct values. Even though we only changed one, you probably could just copy that one. All right, paste, remember paste values only. And that's fixed. So if you've got any yellows, that means it's above 20 and it's an impossible grade. So go back and fix it. Because remember, 20 is our maximum. If you've got a red, then that's a failing student, essentially. You don't want to have too many reds. A few scattered here and there are okay. This all does depend on the school, though, depending on their policy regarding those failing students, but that's what you want. So you just copied all of those very quickly. All right, let's do the same for participation. I'll do this without the full explanation. We can see how quickly it can be done. Okay, so again, participation. I'm going to move the projects away really quick. Project over there, project over there. All right, test, test, test. Add the column to the right. We're going to say this is our PT Unit 2 average. We'll type average in here, equals average. Select the correct columns. All right, drag across just those ones there, equals, and then let that autofill. Don't forget to get rid of the decimal points over there. Now you can copy with your Control-C or your right-click copy. Go back here, paste values. Remember to paste values, and there you go. We've got our grades in there for participation. Now, because I'm doing test as a singular end of unit test and not divide it up into little chunks, you can copy that directly into it. Okay, as long as it's whole numbers. Paste values just in case, get in the good habit of that, and there you go. It doesn't take too long. Remember, you have to do that for all classes. I won't do the additional where the project grades are, but remember we did take project grades for classwork participation, and this does say test here, but it's actually the project grade because it's an additional. So you can paste them in there accordingly, doing the same method using the average. Okay, and there are your two project grades there. So that's it. That's what you have to do, and make sure you do it at the end of your unit before the grades are due. Right, we want to make sure things are turned in on time, because once you complete your grade sheet, that goes down the line. Your operations manager, your coordinator, they all have to look at it. They have to then check everything's all good, make sure the school's happy with it, etc., and then manipulate the grades as they need to be per the school's requirements, and then send it to the school. So if you're delaying your grades, you're making it a little bit harder for the people down the line to complete it as well. So please make sure you do that on time. And then feel free to re-watch the recording as much as you need to go through and check those grades and how to do that. All right, so that's pretty much the whole process. Watch out for the yellow ones because they're impossible grades, and the red ones, make sure you don't have too many failing grades, and please make sure you're following up with your students to avoid that situation in the first place. Okay, that's kind of it for our demonstration. Let's move on to the rest of this. Let me just change my presentation. Back to our grading sheets. Okay. There we go. Now, importing grades checklist. Let's see if I followed all these. Hopefully I did. All right. Set up the grade categories and default points for each class. Good. So CW classwork, PT participation, and 20. Have I graded all work for every student in class? Yes. Graded everything. Made sure I followed up and got all the students to put in their work. Remember, you have to actually, I didn't show you this specifically, but if you copy anything that is blank, then that's not counting as a 0. So if you average something that is a blank, it doesn't actually count toward their average. So if you did 6 assignments and a student got 0 on one of them, you actually need to type in the 0 and submit that grade. So making sure you are submitting every grade through to each student. All right, so grade all the work to the students for every student and every class. All right, including putting 0s there if you want that to be part of their average. All right, labeling all the assignments with the grade category and unit number. So yeah, CW Unit 2, or remember you can have those emojis. Have you assigned a due date to every assignment? That's just to make things clean and also so students know when work is due. Have you ensured student names are in the same order on both sheets? Yes, very important, so that students get their correct grades. Have you pasted the correct values without any decimal points? All right, remember, paste values and reduce that to round up or down so that there's no decimal points. And then double check everything, all right? Don't just do it and be like, oh, I'm done, I'm done. Make sure you double check that there's no mistakes made throughout the process, okay? Good. Now, a few more things before we finish. Frequently asked questions. Number one, can I use one grade for both additional and basics, both basic and additional? No, essentially. If you need to keep track of which grades you are using for each, you can try either labeling your assignments like so. You can use the emoji here, like with the plus, or like what I did in the example sheet, I wrote the word project for my project grades, right? Up to you how you want to do it, so you can label it, or you can also highlight the grade once you've taken it. So I'll quickly show you what that may look like. Here we are. So I did all these classworks. I'll highlight those, okay? And use the bucket fill, I'll say green. I've done all of those ones. Now these are the project ones I haven't done, and I can use this for additional because I use the other ones for core, okay? So you can separate them like that. So I know not to use these ones again, okay? Making sure we're not using the same piece of work to fill in different grade categories. Now remember to make sure they're all graded, and to excuse me, and to definitely make sure that your students, oops, here I'll go back. Your students are getting enough assignments so that you're not scrambling for grades at the end of the unit. Right? Making sure you're giving them some small bits of classwork every session, every couple of sessions. Not everything has to be graded, but it is a good idea to make sure you've got quite a few. So it's fair on the students. Maybe they're having a bad day and they get a bad score on one. That's okay. They can make it up with the other assignments that you're setting, the other classwork you're setting, okay? So highlight the grade, label your assignments. Do not use one classwork grade for both additional and basic. Don't reuse grades, okay? Next, can I set classwork to be worth different points? Yes, you can. It's within your control. My recommendation is putting everything out of 20. So at the end, you can just average it all. Just average everything out of 20 and then put that in directly to the final grade sheet. Perfect, no problem. Now, some schools may require some classwork to be worth a different amount. Now, the downside is that there's going to be less flexibility and it's potentially a little bit messier depending on how you keep things organized. So, for example, this school likes to have 5 points for participation and then do 4 things for participation. That's okay. Same with classwork. You've got 10 and you've got 2 sets of classwork, and that equals 20. So you're just dividing that 20 up into 20 points across the semester, across the unit, rather than trying to do 20, 20, 20 multiple times. And then the test was just a 1 out of 20. So you can change this around as much as you like. Highly recommend the 20 out of 20, but the best way is if you've got, the best thing about it is the flexibility. So let's say there's, school events pop up and you get less time to teach and so forth, and you're like, oh, I haven't been able to give them this little class worksheet or that, something like that. Then you can just still average out of what you have already provided. Or, it essentially just makes it time management a little bit easier. So you're not scrambling to get that 4th one in if they haven't completed all of them, essentially. You're thinking, oh, where am I going to get those extra 5 points from? I need to find somewhere to get those extra 5 points. If you had just done 3 assignments all worth 20, you could average that, all 3 averaged, and you've got 20, instead of having to mess about trying to find that extra 5 points, or doing an equation where you're timesing by, timesing by 20, divided by 15, doing these things, trying to work out the actual total, okay? So it does provide a little bit more flexibility with that. And messier, the students be like, oh, is this one out of 5 or this one's out of 20? teacher, does this one count for, what are we doing? So if you keep it consistent with everything out of 20, then the students know that their raw score out of 20 is what they're going to get. Okay, that's it for the frequently asked questions section. And the Q&A is now. We haven't got any questions in the chat, but feel free to shoot me a message at any point. You can use my email here, hr2@tkt.ac.th, or just type in James or James Tovey into your compose, your to field on your email, and send that through to me. The recording, the slides are going to go up onto the BFITS training resources Google Classroom, right? So that will probably go up tomorrow. And if you'd like to, provide any feedback, feel free to do so through the same channel there. All right, thank you very much, everyone. That's pretty much it for our grading. Take it easy. See you next month.